The Way of the Lamb, Part 4 of Chapter 1. The way of the Lamb leads to a victor's crown. It was as the Lamb that our Savior conquered, not as the Lord of heaven and earth, who spoke and it was done, who commanded and it stood fast. He sent his disciples out as lambs to overcome a world that knew him not, that was bitterly opposed to him, and they conquered it. When Jacob was overcome, he conquered and became Israel. To be weak is not the same as to stumble or fall. It is rather to be helpless and without defense, to be nothing in one's self. Only then is there room for the power of God. In 1 Corinthians 1:25, Paul says that the weakness of God is stronger than men. Here, weakness is attributed to God. When I am overcome, he is my helper, says David. God always takes the part of the weak. There is a holy way in which to be defeated. One can suffer defeat for God's sake. Mary submitted to her sister Martha. She remained patient when the latter rebuked her. Hannah submitted to the taunts of Peninnah. She allowed herself to be provoked. Jesus' whole life, from his first day to his death on the cross, was nothing other than submission, but he endured it for God's sake. And step by step, it brought victory to his side. It was through suffering that the grace of God was upon him so mightily, and God was his unfailing help. Thus he went from victory to victory, and where he descended to the deepest depths, he won the most perfect and glorious victory, with nail-pierced hands and feet, but with a heart full of obedience. He conquered sin and the world and hell. On Mount Zion, where, as the most despised and scorned, he suffered defeat, John saw a vision of him standing as the Lord of victory, and at his side the fruit of his death, 144,000 on whose foreheads his and the Father's names were written. Today, where you allow yourself to be overcome for his sake, you will sooner or later receive the fruits of victory. When Joseph was sent to prison, when Daniel was cast into the lion's den and his friends condemned to the fiery furnace, they did not appear to be victors, but they were. Here God's weakness was stronger than men, stronger than an empire of 120 provinces. And what was revealed in the Garden of Gethsemane, before the council of the Jews, before Pilate's judgment seat in the hands of the soldiers and on the cross, God's weakness, which is stronger than men, stronger than the kingdom of death. In Hebrews 11, we are given a vision of the heroes of faith. The first had to give up his life because his brother hated him. And concerning the last ones, we are told they were stoned, they were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented. They wandered in deserts and in mountains and in dens and caves. Were these heroes? Yes, 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 in the judgment of God. It is written that they from weakness were made strong. Verse 34. What does this mean? Through suffering they became able to bear much suffering. By enduring, they were made strong to endure. By being defeated, they learned to conquer. Because Jesus, for 3 years, had endured Judas, he could cry out from the cross, "Father, forgive them." Because he had experienced being denied by his own, he could bear to be denied by a whole people. Thus did the Lamb become a lion. The way of the Lamb is the way to glory. Because Jesus humbled himself, he was exalted. 4 steps downward led him up to glory. We read in Philippians 2:6-9, 1, he gave up the privilege of equality with God. 2, he humbled himself. 1, he gave up the privilege of equality with God. 2, he humbled himself. 3, he became obedient unto death. 4, even the death of the cross. Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name. That was his way to glory, and for us too, there is no other way. So again, those 4 items. 1, he gave up the privilege of equality with God. 2, he humbled himself. 3, he became obedient unto death. 4, even the death of the cross. Wherefore God also has highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name. That was his way to glory, and for us too, there is no other way. Only the way in the footprints of the Lamb leads to the throne. To be glorified as the Lamb is to become like the Lamb. To be glorified as the Lamb is to become like the Lamb. We cannot become like him as God's Son, as the King of heaven and earth, but we can be like him as by becoming as lambs. He is the pattern to which God molds us. When God planned the creation of man, he said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." The image that resembles him, the Son of Man, is God's ideal. And from this ideal, he has never turned away. In Revelation 19, we see it realized. There was a great multitude. There a great multitude is seen standing by the side of the Lamb, his bride, in appearance like unto himself. Wow! Whoa! Whoa! From this ideal, he has never turned away from making man in his image. In Revelation 19, we see it realized. There is a great multitude. They're standing by the side of the Lamb, his bride, in appearance like unto himself. Just marinate in that. That's amazing. We often stop with justification, but God does not stop here. Those whom he called, them he also justified, and whom he justified, them he also glorified. Romans 8:30. How glorious is God's design for us, that we be conformed to the image of his Son. Romans 8:29. And in the same chapter, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God. Verse 28. The Lord's hand guides our way, and he leads us only in paths that are necessary for our discipline and growth. Only those who dare to follow him shall stand by the side of the Lamb. They walk in his way, even when it is said concerning them, we are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Romans 8:36. They do not seek gifts and blessings, but only him. And they say with Asaph, whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is none upon earth that I desire besides thee. Psalm 73:25.